558 AD. Constantinople, the middle of a church service. The dome cracked. Then it fell. 24 years after it was built, the dome of the greatest building in the world collapsed onto the altar below. And the dome was gone. What happened next is the part nobody talks about. They built it again, different, taller, and this time, it stayed. To understand what happened, you need to understand the man who ordered it. Emperor Justinian I, ruler of the Byzantine Empire. A man with the ego to match. In 532 AD, the previous church on this site had just been burned to the ground during a citywide riot that killed tens of thousands of people. Justinian's response was not to rebuild what was there before. He wanted something that had never existed before. A dome, bigger than anything ever attempted. And he wanted it finished in 5 years. Justinian didn't hire architects. He hired mathematicians. Anthemius of Tralles and Isidore of Miletus, two men who approached the problem not as builders, but as geometers. They had no precedent for a dome this size. Nobody did. So they invented one. The solution was called pendentives, curved triangular sections that transferred the dome's enormous weight onto 4 massive piers below, rather than trying to support it from the walls directly. On paper, the geometry was perfect. In practice, it almost worked. 10,000 workers, working simultaneously in shifts around the clock. The dome itself was built from special hollow bricks fired in rods, lighter than standard Roman brick, specifically to reduce the load pressing down on those 4 piers below. Every detail was calculated to push the weight downward and outward in the most controlled way possible. And it was completed in 5 years, 10 months, and 4 days. When Justinian walked in for the first time, he reportedly looked up at the dome and said, "Solomon, I have surpassed thee." He was not being modest. The dome was 31 meters across, almost exactly the same diameter as the Pantheon in Rome, which had been the world record for 1,400 years. But where the Pantheon sits heavy and solid, this dome appeared to float. 40 windows ran around its base, flooding the interior with light, making the masonry seem to dissolve, floating on a ring of light. The Byzantine scholar Procopius, who saw it completed, wrote that the dome seemed suspended from heaven by a golden chain. He was trying to describe something that had no precedent, because it didn't. But Anthemius and Isidore had made one critical miscalculation. A dome doesn't just push down, it pushes outward. The dome pushes outward as much as it pushes down, and that lateral thrust has to go somewhere. The original dome was too shallow, too flat. The shallow profile amplified the outward thrust rather than channeling it downward. Within years of completion, the eastern arch began to crack. The mathematicians had calculated the geometry perfectly. They had underestimated the physics. On May 7th, 558 AD, 21 years after completion, the eastern half of the dome collapsed. It destroyed the altar, the ciborium, and the ambo below. Justinian was furious. He was also still alive. He ordered the rebuild immediately. This time the job went to Isidore the Younger, nephew of the original architect. And Isidore the Younger understood what had gone wrong. He raised the dome by 6 meters, made it steeper. A steeper dome generates less lateral thrust. The weight travels more downward and less outward. The fix worked. The rebuilt dome has been standing for over 1,400 years. After the rebuild, the structure kept being tested. Istanbul sits in one of the world's most active earthquake zones. The building absorbed 19 recorded earthquakes over the following centuries, including several major ones. It survived partly because of what came after. Massive buttresses added to the exterior over the following centuries, pressing against the walls from outside. But also because of how it was originally built. Byzantine brick-and-mortar construction used unusually thick mortar joints, almost as thick as the bricks themselves. The mortar itself acts as a shock absorber. The building flexes, rather than shattering. This building has had 4 completely different lives. Byzantine Christian cathedral for 900 years, Ottoman mosque for almost 500, museum for 86 years, and mosque again since 2020. When the Ottomans converted it in 1453, they did something remarkable. Ottoman craftsmen covered the Christian mosaics not by destroying them, but by plastering over them, preserved under plaster, accidentally or deliberately. Historians still debate the intent. When the plaster was removed in the 20th century, the mosaics were still there, gold still gleaming, after 500 years in the dark. Modern engineers have run every analysis available on this building. Laser scans, finite element modeling, seismic simulations. And they found something strange. The dome is not a perfect hemisphere. It's slightly irregular, subtly elliptical in cross-section. Whether Isidore the Younger designed it this way deliberately, or whether it's simply a construction deviation that accidentally improved performance, nobody knows. And more broadly, nobody has fully agreed on why it is still standing. Not definitively. The maths keep producing answers that should make it fall. And it keeps not falling. Here's something the architects almost certainly didn't plan. The acoustics. The Hagia Sophia has a reverberation time of nearly 11 seconds. 11 seconds. A sound made in this building takes 11 seconds to fully decay. Byzantine chant, the liturgical music developed for this space, was specifically written to work within that reverb. Long, slow, overlapping phrases that sound transcendent precisely because of how the dome catches and holds them. The building was effectively a musical instrument, one that nobody designed on purpose. Okay, we know what it is. We know why it fell. We know how it was fixed. But this building still has questions nobody has answered. Mystery 1. When engineers run finite element models on the Hagia Sophia, the same structural analysis used to design modern skyscrapers, the models keep predicting it should fail. The stress concentrations at the base of the dome, at the piers, at the arches, by the numbers, this building should not be standing. And yet here it is, 1,500 years later. The building appears to know something the models don't. Nobody has agreed on what that something is. Mystery 2. Look closely at the columns inside the Hagia Sophia. Many of them are far older than the building. 8 columns were brought from the Temple of Artemis at Ephesus, one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world, which had been standing for centuries before Justinian was born. Others came from temples and monuments across the empire. Nobody has fully agreed on why Justinian chose to incorporate these ancient columns rather than cut new ones. Was it practical, reusing what was available? Or was it symbolic, Justinian literally building the old world into his new one? Both, probably. But the ratio of each, nobody knows. Mystery 3. And this one is just strange. In the northwest corner of the Hagia Sophia, there is a column with a small hole in it. Visitors press their thumbs into the hole as they pass, a tradition going back centuries. The legend says it weeps with healing moisture. And here's the thing. The column genuinely does seem to be slightly damp. Condensation from temperature differentials possibly. The natural moisture content of the ancient stone. The specific porosity of that marble type. Nobody has produced a universally accepted explanation. It's just slightly wet. Has been for 1,500 years. Mystery 4. In the upper gallery of the Hagia Sophia, carved into the marble balcony railing, a Viking carved his name. In runes, the inscription reads, Halfdan carved these runes. A Norse soldier, almost certainly a member of the Varangian guard that served the Byzantine emperors, sat bored in this gallery sometime in the 9th or 10th century, and did what bored people have always done. There are other inscriptions too. Other languages, other centuries, other people who passed through. This building has been collecting secrets for 15 centuries. Most of them we haven't found yet. Mystery 5. And this one is still unfolding. Since 2020, the Hagia Sophia has functioned again as a mosque. The Byzantine mosaics are now covered again during prayer times. UNESCO has raised concerns about conservation. The debate about what this building is, who it belongs to, and what it should be used for is as live now as it was in 537 AD. The building has survived everything the last 15 centuries threw at it. Collapses, earthquakes, conquests, empires rising and falling around it. What happens next is genuinely unclear, which, for a 1,500-year-old building, feels oddly appropriate. We still don't know exactly why the dome keeps standing when the models say it shouldn't. We don't know if Justinian chose those ancient columns for power, for practicality, or for both. We don't know how many inscriptions are still hidden in the walls. What we do know is this. In 558 AD, the dome fell. They looked at the wreckage, and they built it taller. The Hagia Sophia is still standing, still being used, still making engineers uncomfortable when they run the numbers. We've now covered 5 structures across 4 civilizations: Egypt, Rome, Iran, Byzantium. Next time on Cracks in History, we go somewhere completely different. 5,000 years ago, in Ireland, before the pyramids existed. A farming community with no metal tools and no writing system sealed themselves inside a hill and built a roof that has never leaked. Once a year, for exactly 17 minutes, the sun finds them. Subscribe if you want to see how that works.